Time a hurricane comes, they come out here and just kind of enjoy the water and enjoy the scenes before things start to really get bad. Again, we do not recommend doing this. But you can see just how far this water has started to come in already here in the harbor. It's already pushed into the boat launch, if you would. This is like a circle drive where folks can turn around and go back up. That's already starting being inundated with water. It's come up a lot ever since we've been here. We've been here probably an hour and a half, if not 2 hours at this point. We showed you a little bit earlier the water to our right, which you're looking right now. It's already starting to splash over and overtake a lot of the sidewalks here at the harbor. There's another section a little further up from us that's it's past the pergola, the overhang out there. That sidewalk has already been inundated with water, so it really is starting to come up. The bands are coming kind of in and out right now, so we are getting a lot of heavy water at some point, and then it will kind of slack off for a little bit. But it's the winds that really do come in those gusts. And that's one thing that parish leaders are really concerned here about. As long as the wind gusts and the winds stay about the same, the storm surge should be anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. And the parish leaders say they can handle that. They should be fine with it. And that shouldn't cause any type of rise in river levels. But of course, we all know that can change. The major impacts that are expected to be felt here, parish leaders say, is going to be somewhere between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. That mainly deals with wind. And we expect gusts up to about 60 miles an hour. Of course, this is just the beginning stages around here. There are no shelters, by the way, in St. Tammany Parish for folks who may need them, but if you do need to try and get some assistance and get out of whatever conditions you're in right now, you can call the parish. They will try to hook you up and link you up with some faith-based services that are trying to help people kind of last minute. Right now, it's just, storm, a lot of wait and see at this point. We did catch up with the EOC director, the emergency management director here in St. Tammany Parish, and he kind of talked about the overarching concerns that they have here in St. Tammany Parish. So take a listen to him.
Overarchingly, our biggest concern is what's going to happen with the storm surge and how much rainfall we get. The winds are a concern, right, because it's tropical storm force winds, but that happens with thunderstorms here pretty regularly. And so we're pretty resilient to that for the most part. The bigger concern would be that storm surge coastal, but all of our drainage is gravity. And so when the rivers and creeks can't drain because the lake's backed up, any additional rainfall we get can cause increased flooding.
So parish leaders are asking folks to stay inside and stay where you are. It's that shelter-in-place type scenario because preparation time is over at this point, and they want to make sure everyone does stay off the roads. Of course, some people, as we see, just kind of enjoying the weather out here on Lake Pontchartrain here on the lakefront, couldn't be bothered with Hurricane Francine coming ashore. So we'll, of course, keep tracking everything down here, and we will going to be heading over to Tangipahoa Parish, where the center, the eye wall, is expected to be a little closer just to the west of us there. So live from the Mandeville Lakefront, Mike McDaniel, WWL Louisiana. Listening back to Chris now.
Hey, Mike, tell those kids to get off the seawall. All right, I'll stop being a dad and yelling at everybody for a moment. All right, this is what's a little bit interesting when we get these kind of now hourly coordinates from the Hurricane Center, but also with the storm now well into radar range. This is where the center was just a half hour ago. As you watch the loop here, it does look like it's not really moving what would be kind of a forecasted northeasterly direction. It looks almost due northeast, and that is what the Hurricane Center said was occurring a while ago. But as you just kind of follow that center line, and I know we don't follow it directly, but it does look like it would be putting possibly the core of the storm more so over Metro New Orleans. So it is very, very possible, the way the trend has been looking, that we could see the core of the storm, kind of the eye of the storm, actually pass directly over New Orleans proper. We are getting ready to see some of the strongest of the rainfall moving over and some of the stronger winds. Thibodaux, as we kind of zoom in on our single site radar, so we're just looking at the radar out of Hammond. Morgan City, the intense rainfall, that band continues through Thibodaux, Raceland, Cutoff, Galliano. Didn't make a great deal of progress more than when we were just with you a few minutes ago, but this heavy rainfall is starting to move a little bit closer to metropolitan New Orleans. So kind of now almost a broadly defined eye wall, we could call it. Certainly not the eye wall of a Category 5 storm. This is not a Category 5 storm. To be honest, it's barely a Category 2 storm, but I'll let that rest. This is the heavier rain that is starting to move. So we're getting into the river parishes now. Jean Lafitte, moderate to heavy rainfall, but it's about to get a bit heavier for you. We're also getting kind of on the outer side of the eye wall itself, these little pockets of heavier storms moving across Belle Chase and most of metro New Orleans at this moment. Now, I say at this moment because these storms are moving very quickly. Not a bad thing. We want this to move in and out of here as fast as possible. But just kind of a heads up, just looking at the trajectory the storm has been taking on radar here. And actually what we can do is, I got you here. And I can go to the last 3 hours and we can kind of take a look at the radar data from the last 3 hours to get kind of a rough idea of where the storm may be a little bit more projected. And again, there are going to be little wobbles. It might move what almost seems to be a little bit more north, and it might be a little bit more of an easterly or northeasterly direction. But as you watch this over the last 3 hours, we'll go back to the first frame here, kind of a very broad eye wall. It's a very large, broad circulation. It looks to be a little bit more northeasterly, which again would mean possibly getting into a little bit more of the core of the storm over metro New Orleans in just a little while. We were probably not too far away from this moving then in our direction. I say our meaning metro New Orleans and the greatest part of the population, northern JP, river parishes, into Orleans, northern Plaquemines, St. Bernard. So a much larger area of the population possibly getting into some of the worst of the storm. Now, thankfully, we are not seeing those 100-mile-per-hour winds sustained anywhere else. As the hurricane director, deputy director, had told us in a video chat just a little while ago, he didn't say it, but I'm going to say it. It can be a little bit more misleading. That 100-mile-an-hour wind was an observation from the hurricane hunters that are estimating winds down at the surface, and that is only one observation. That does not really say anything else about the rest of the storm. And you're not going to find 100-mile-per-hour winds at any of our surface-based observations. In fact, as the storm nears a bit closer to Morgan City, their winds are still at 44 miles an hour, still at 28 miles an hour. Now, again, I don't want to downplay that, but I also want you to understand we're not looking at 100-mile-an-hour winds to start moving over metro New Orleans. 40 plus miles an hour, absolutely. Gusting 60 to 70, absolutely as well. But I think some of the models that we had been looking at have been much more on the higher end of what was a possibility, maybe a slight possibility, but a possibility. That's why I've said our weather coverage as far as meteorology goes, we kind of shift from the model-based data to try and figure out what is going to happen to show you what is actually happening. So we've kind of gone from the guessing and the forecasting and now just showing you the observations of what is actually happening on the ground. So the winds will be picking up at Kenner. They will be picking up elsewhere around the metro area and elsewhere as the storm continues along that northeasterly track. Intense rainfall, though. These are normally you've got intense rain, and radar reflectivity, the returns that you see on radar, are not exactly the same as what we look at when we are looking at severe storms or just summertime showers and thunderstorms. Because you also have within these storms very strong winds, the radar sometimes has a tough time kind of differentiating what is moderate, what is heavy. But when those brighter reds are showing up on what is tropical rainfall, that is usually indicative of some very intense rain. And as we are approaching sunset, it's going to be hard to see anything with very reduced visibility and then no lights. And if we start getting more and more power outages, it suddenly becomes very, very dangerous to be out on the road. So this is when you want to be inside, especially down toward the coast. At this point, you should have been indoors for quite a while. But note, the eye itself is starting to move more so over Terrebonne Parish. So Houma, Lily Cummings is getting a little bit of a break. And elsewhere, Chauvin, we do have a camera out of LUMCOM, which is Louisiana Consortium Marine Observations Research. They have a station down there, and we've been watching the water coming up gradually all day today. It looks like they're at least getting a break from the rainfall, but the water is still surging up as the storm center is not too far away. Those intense storms moving across the metro area will continue to move toward the North Shore, and through the rest of this evening and the night, conditions will continue to worsen. Do have a few at times breaks, kind of brief, but at least there are breaks. This is not just constant deluge of rain. One thing that is interesting, I did switch over from what was our infrared satellite to visible. There had been some signs of a little eye trying to form as it was moving toward the coast. We're starting to lose our daylight imagery, but that little feature was definitely trying to do something. Thankfully, that occurred just before landfall and not yesterday or on Monday, as this storm would have started to probably kind of skyrocket in strengthening. But as we had been mentioning with this, it was never going to be in a very hospitable environment for real intensification. It wasn't out of the realm of possibilities to see it become a 1 or maybe even a 2, but that was looking less and less likely as we kind of went through time, as this moved into even more hostile conditions across the northern Gulf Coast. So those brighter cloud tops that had been indicated earlier with that burst of convection right over southern Terrebonne Parish has started to fall apart. And notice, we're not seeing, and we'll watch this trend, we're not seeing any new bursts of thunderstorms south of the coast. So maybe within the next several hours, we will start to see the more intense rains wrapping up. And hopefully we have a few more hours to go of those intense rains. And maybe by 10 o'clock tonight, much of the area will already start drying out. As I said, I think we're going to be into the worst of it shortly. Worst of it will move through fairly quickly, and then we will already start to see improving conditions late tonight going toward midnight and through the overnight hours. So the 5 o'clock advisory, again, 100-mile-an-hour winds. It does make it a Category 2. The convection, though, does look to be kind of falling apart once again, and hopefully that is a trend. Again, we've got the dry air and increasing wind shear, which should hopefully help to rip the storm apart. Moving very quickly, let's see as the 6 o'clock advisory will come in if that forward speed has increased any more. As we get toward early tomorrow morning, 2, 3 a.m., we will likely see the center of the storm already moving into southwestern Mississippi, and conditions here dramatically improved. Morgan City winds are at 52 miles an hour, so you're not too far away from the center. So those strongest hurricane force winds are right at the center of this storm. It is not a very large hurricane wind field, let alone even the strongest tropical storm force winds. We've seen the wind gusts holding about the same in the metro area, 28, 30 miles per hour thus far. Those numbers will be increasing again. I don't really even trust the models at this point with the forecasted increase in our wind speeds as we go throughout the rest of the evening and night. So I'll be better off kind of giving you an estimate of what we're expecting. Now, as far as the rainfall totals go, we have already picked up 2+ inches of rain. Now, we're going to add to those totals by probably another few inches, but that would put us probably in the range of the 4 to 6, which, while we don't want to see, is somewhat manageable, especially if we can kind of keep that through the evening and into the night tonight. And it's more of a steady rain that we can just allow for some normal drainage, well, normal being our pumping stations, but just allowing that water to be able to get pumped out of the city to where hopefully major flooding is not an issue. Thankfully, knock on wood, we have not really seen the training of rain where we're getting bands of several inches of rainfall in a short period of time. Really have not seen that as much of a setup, and it doesn't look like that really will be much of a concern, because normally with a slower moving storm is when you would get those bands and kind of the training of the rainfall moving through. And thankfully this is moving so quickly. Any kind of training of rain, which we do kind of have in a sense down kind of from the river parishes down toward Galliana, Port Fourchon, they're moving very, very rapidly. So while we will see some pretty dramatic accumulations, hopefully those then kind of move on and we'll see those spread out over a larger period. So as of right now, and kind of to update what we've been discussing, I think they told me I was supposed to go a couple of minutes and I've talked for maybe 20. Yeah, the producer just confirmed that. Well, you didn't wrap me, so I'll just keep talking. I'm just going to keep on talking. So just to kind of reiterate what we have been saying over and over again, it is a Category 2, little misleading. You're not going to find 100-mile-an-hour winds anywhere. A lot of the storms themselves have been weakening, but they're still fairly intense moving through the area. That will still be an issue for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. So this is the time of folks in the metro area. Really, we're looking at some of our traffic cameras, not too many folks on the roads any longer. And so hopefully at this point, you're just kind of in place, waiting this out. Hopefully the power outages are not too widespread. And I think we're going to be getting through this. We'll be getting through this. Telling me to wrap now. We'll get through this just fine.
You know, God gave you the gift of gab. Chris.
We appreciate it
I don't know
at
if
these
it's necessarily
times.
a gift.
I mean, for this job, it is.
When I was a kid, it was not. You can ask any one of my teachers.
No, but I mean, for this job, I've always said Chris could literally talk for 3 hours straight, and no one needed to interrupt him.
Yeah, it'd be
Ever.
fine.
Stop interrupting me.
Right.
Got a lot to say.
I know, it's so rude.
Well,
It
we'll
is.
tell Tori not to wrap you next time.
Right.
All right, we do have some important things that are happening elsewhere. We've got this is brand new coming into the newsroom here. This is a child who was found in the city of New Orleans, and they are looking for his parents.
They are. He was found in around the Gentilly area, I believe, wandering out near Paris Avenue and Mirabeau and Paris. That's where, police found him. They're searching for his family. If you know who he might belong to, that's the number to call on your screen, 504-658-6030. Alyssa Curtis has been covering news in New Orleans for us today. She's joining us live now with the latest on this. Alyssa, this is disturbing and scary. Hopefully the little guy's okay.
Yeah, it seems like he is safe with NOPD right now. Again, he was found in this area of Mirabeau and Paris Avenue. NOPD says that they tried to canvass the area to see if they can find who he belongs to, but unfortunately they didn't have any luck. So they're asking, if you know who he belongs to, if he belongs to you, just please to call NOPD and meet up with them and get him. This is unfortunate in any situation, but especially in weather conditions like this and the rain conditions, it is extra unfortunate. It's raining over here, and we're not exactly sure how long he was wandering, where he kind of wandered from. So I'm not exactly sure, just how long he was out without his parents. I'm not sure if we have a pic. I know we have a picture of him. I'm not sure if we're pulling it up right now on camera, but NOPD says he is about 2 years old, so fairly young, very, very young. They said that he was wearing a red-colored shirt, red shorts, and red Nike shoes. So if that boy looks familiar to you, or you know who his parents are, his family, please give them a call. It says, NOPD says that he was found around 2:30, the information from this email, and a little bit wacky here, but he was found about 2:30, again, in this area of Mirabeau and Paris Avenue. NOPD says that they tried to canvass the area on some doors to see if he belonged to anyone. Again, they said no luck. So if you do know who this boy is, or if you're getting calls from your friends or family and saying, hey, I can't find my son or my grandson, whoever he is, please let them know that NOPD has him. He is safe with NOPD. Again, just really unfortunate, especially in these weather conditions, since he was roaming around. That's all the real information we have right now. I'm going to call NOPD and see if there's any more updates. Again, this just came in a few minutes ago, so just check and see, make some calls, and give a call to NOPD.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, for that. Hopefully his parents are found very soon. This is a dangerous time for this little child. Well, it's always a dangerous time, right? But it's always a dangerous time for a 2-year-old child to be walking around outside by themselves. So hopefully his parents are found quickly.
Absolutely. We're going to go to David Hammer now. He has been all over the place.
He has. David's been on Utility Watch today, talking with Entergy and the Sewerage and Water Board, keeping tabs on things that are happening in New Orleans. The storm, the worst of it is knocking on the door. So how are we looking where you are, David?
Well, Katie and Devin, I'm actually on Rampart Street, and as soon as Chris Franklin said that we're going to start to see those bands come into the New Orleans metro area, it shifted and we started getting these kind of gusts, and we started getting driven rain here in New Orleans for the first time after it looked almost like the sun might come out. But there have been these bands coming through, and in preparation, the Sewerage and Water Board has the most power that it's ever had in preparation for one of these storms, and the Flood Authority has closed the gates on 2 of the 3 outfall canals. Those are important because then They hit a certain level, 3 feet or 4 feet, depending on the canal, and then they pump the water out to the lake to make sure that lake water isn't coming in from storm surge. That's true now at the 17th Street Canal and at the London Avenue Canal. I'm told that the third canal, the Orleans Avenue Canal, may not close at all. That may not be necessary. We shall see how that develops. But I was out at the lakefront about 2 hours ago, and there were still people walking around. And take a listen. So I'm out here at the lakefront along Lakeshore Drive, and I'm joined by Chuck Foy. He's just been out here with a couple of friends, I guess, taking a walk and then taking in the scenery here at Lake Pontchartrain. How many times have you been through something like this?
I grew up over in Destin, Florida, my whole life, so hurricanes all the time. Yeah. I worked on the beach over there, so just another hurricane to me. I've seen a lot worse. Haven't been through one in New Orleans yet, so I figured let's experience it.
Yeah, I've been out here on the lakefront for hurricanes since like 1987, and they, sometimes can fill up to cover all the way up to that levee and not necessarily have a big impact. But we see the water starting to come up over these walls here. Absolutely. Are you concerned at all?
Not too concerned. Our house that we're staying at's a little bit more inland. I know the flood system here, they do a good job trying to maintain it. So really, I'm just not looking forward to losing power. So we stocked up on food, not opening the fridge, keep a generator ready. That's pretty much it.
Do you have any more preparations that you need to do at this point?
Flashlights, potable water. Those are the biggest things. You can not eat for a little while. You can be plenty hot. You run out of water, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Now, they're actually talking about starting to close the gates here. We're right by the Orleans Avenue closure complex, one of the 3 outfall canals, yes. And they're looking to close that when it hits 3 feet, and it's about 2 to 3 feet right now. This is an improvement over what we had at Katrina. Yeah. Are you feeling good about the way things are set up now?
Yes, I am. Also, this storm shouldn't be anything near the level of Katrina. Fingers crossed.
Right.
But I'm pretty confident that things are going to be okay. The pump systems are working. The gates, everything's going to. The city has learned lessons, and they're making the right decisions now. Plus, our first responders. I know a bunch of folks are standing by, ready to go. We'll just have to see how it pans out, but I think we'll be pretty okay.
Yeah, and you hear that level of confidence there. We haven't seen that in a long time, ever since 2017 when it just started flooding all across the city during a regular rainstorm. Things have felt like they were not going to get better. There have been improvements. We have more power available, 70 megawatts of power available to pump inside the Sewage and Water Board system. We have these new gates that were installed after Katrina that are working at full strength right now, pumping water out from those outfall canals. And you could see Chuck there, he was very confident, and we heard that same confidence from Mayor LaToya Cantrell at a press conference earlier today, and from Entergy. We talked to Deanna Rodriguez, the CEO of Entergy New Orleans, who says that they have all systems ready to go. They have real-time updates in their emergency operations center, and they have the New Orleans East NOPS power plant ready to go and actually online already. We saw during Hurricane Ida that it was supposed to black start, and when we lost power coming from the outside, and it didn't work because the feeder system that it had to feed into was not working, and there was so much damage to it. We hope that there's nothing like that in this case. Rodriguez said that that's nothing what we're looking at in this particular storm, but it's good to know that it is available, and so far all of these systems are working properly, and we haven't heard any reports of any major failures.
All right, David, such great information. I mean, we're so lucky to have you keeping tabs on that stuff. Lots of great questions to ask. And, you were out at the lakefront earlier. Those waves were rocking.
Yeah, I mean, like I said when I was talking to Chuck there, we have seen storms that turned out to be really a whole lot of nothing, and they pushed a lot of wind-driven water from Lake Pontchartrain into that lakefront, that Lakeshore Drive area, all the way up to those earthen levees that protect that Lake Vista and Lakeshore area. And there's nothing like that now. The wind was whipping up, but you still had only a little bit of water coming onto that breezeway, that walkway area alongside the steps there at Lake Pontchartrain. So far, so good. You see that right now, as we speak, the wind is whipping up and the rain is coming down harder. So we'll see if that system continues to hold up. And as we see the winds come around from that north side, they can push more of that Lake Pontchartrain water over and toward those earthen levees. But it doesn't look like anything like we saw in any of those previous storms, certainly not Katrina and not Ida either.
Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully it stays that way.
We know you'll be watching today. Thank you, David.
Will be.
Okay, we've also been taking some questions today, some viewer questions.
Yes, viewers, you guys have a lot of questions out there. You ask great ones, and so Whitney Miller is standing by in the studio with what you need to know at this hour. Whitney?
I am. Thank you guys so much. A lot of questions have been coming into our newsroom. I wanted to first, though, talk to you about, there's some questions about bridges. So before I get to the weather questions, I want to talk to you about the question about bridges. Okay. And you should be in the house at this point. We're in the thick of it right now. But if you want to see about those bridges, if they're closed, people have been asking, are the bridges going to be closed? DOTD is doing live updates on the roadways, and you can go to dotd.la.gov, and that is where you can see the status of those bridges. But you shouldn't be on the bridges right now because you should be in your house.
Right.
All right, so let's get into these weather questions because a lot of the viewers are I think they're weather experts.
They are. Yeah, they really
something
are.
That we've been talking about is the wind shear and the dry air and how it's been breaking things up or was expected to break things up. This question was, will that dry air and wind shear start to affect the hurricane now that it's made landfall?
It is. It is starting to do a number on the storm. I think that even though we are seeing some heavy rain coming in now, of course, the worst of the impacts happening now, the rain, the wind, and the surge, the dry air starting to get into the storm. The rain is only going to be with us through the evening into the night. But as we get to closer to the midnight, overnight, the rain's going to be out of here. So the dry air is helping to make the rain not last as long, and we're also getting some breaks in the rain, which is nice. And also the storm kind of looks a little lopsided on satellite presentation because of that shear and the dry air working into it, making it look a little different than what we usually see when a tropical system comes in, and this was a Cat 2 at landfall.
Right, so that kind of changes things a little bit, right?
Yeah, so it was interesting to see that the NHC did indicate that it is a Cat 2 because they took one measurement in the storm, and they found a wind speed at 100 miles per hour. So they said, okay, let's update this and upgrade it to a Cat 2. But we're not seeing those observations where we live, which is great news. We don't want to see that. But on the ground, like the ground truth where we're at for our bayou parishes and at the coast, we're not seeing observations that high. So sometimes when they measure these things, it's not exactly what you see right at the ground.
Understood. Okay, the next question is about the brown ocean effect. Can you tell me what that is?
So it's like when land imitates the ocean. So we know we live in a marshy area. It's made up of bayous and swamps and this and that. It's like when I moved here first and I looked at the map after actually being here, I'm like, it's mostly water. It's like
it's a lot of water around here.
We're just surrounded by water. And so when the brown ocean effect happens, it's like when a tropical system moves inland and it moves over like a bayou or a marshy area, it's able to maintain its strength because the land mimics the ocean, and that's how tropical systems derive their energy from warm, moist conditions. And the warm, moist conditions, well, they continue over bayous and marshes. So when a tropical system moves inland over those conditions, it can maintain its intensity, it can strengthen. So for our intents and purposes with this storm with Francine, because I know they compared it to Ida, of course, and this is obviously not Ida. We've been saying that ad nauseum. Of course, it's not Ida, which is great,
which is wonderful.
Yeah, but as Francine moves inland, it's not going to weaken right away. So if it were moving over maybe a different landmass that wasn't comprised mostly of water, warm, moist water, if it was moving over a different landmass, then it would weaken almost right away. But because it's moving in over our bayous, it'll probably take a little bit to weaken. I don't think it's going to strengthen. It will just take some time for it to weaken as it moves a little bit farther inland. So I think the weakening process will probably happen later tonight as it gets farther inland.
Yeah, they also wanted to know, should we be worried about the recent rain? Would that add to this this brown ocean effect?
I think that just the brown ocean effect is just there.
It's just for the area.
Yeah, that just applies to our area because of the way that our land, our geography is made up of. That's just like something we'll always have to consider when the tropical system moves inland.
You know, you got to really love Louisiana.
Yes, you really do.
And fight for it. Don't get to stay down here because it's
that's our slogan. It's our slogan.
Because it's true. You got to love it because, I mean, there is water everywhere. That's a real thing. Okay, come on. All right, let me give you another question. Since the hurricane, this one says, since the hurricane is tracking north, once it, oh, no, not that question. I'll get to that one.
A lot of questions.
Yeah. No, that's right. Okay. Once it passes up northward of the Mississippi Valley, will that help with the saltwater intrusion out of the Mississippi?
Yeah,
because we've been dealing with saltwater intrusion since last summer and then a little bit this summer.
Right, so yeah, the officials, I'm not an expert on the saltwater intrusion, but I heard the officials say that with the increased rain for the Midwest, that should actually help the saltwater intrusion a little bit, help the rain come down the Mississippi and push the saltwater water a little bit farther
We're looking
away.
for silver linings in all of this.
So this might be a good thing when it comes to the saltwater intrusion with all the rain expected up there from Francine and coming down the Mississippi should help push it away. Hopefully that will be the case.
Now we saw it kind of shift a little bit, headed more towards New Orleans or the greater New Orleans area. Does that change the trajectory when it comes to like what will happen to Slidell?
So
because I got a lot of people from Slidell asking questions.
I still think, of course, Slidell, they're seeing the heavy bands of rain now. That's not going to change. They'll continue to see the heavy rain through tonight, coming in waves. But the strong winds are going to be really focused more towards the center. I still think they'll have the gusty winds, maybe up to 40 miles per hour at times for Slidell. Worst case scenario, 40, 45, 50. But I think the farther east you are from the center, I think that the wind gust potential will be a little bit lower. But still planning for maybe 40 plus mile per hour gusts in Slidell.
I mean, that's some fast moving wind.
Yeah, it can certainly, topple a weak tree. I mean, or knock out some power even just for a little while.
More reason to stay on the inside.
Yeah.
So would that be the same then for Bay St. Louis? I got a few people from Bay St. Louis asking about their chances.
Yeah, same thing. Like farther east you go, Bay St. Louis, still seeing the heavy rain through tonight, and the wind gusts up to maybe 30, 40, especially right at the coastline. Right at the coastline, Bay St. Louis, right at the coast. Probably seeing the 40 mile per hour gusts.
Now that it has made the landfall, that doesn't mean it's made landfall in more northern.
Right. We still have more hours to go of the storm. Yeah, the rest of tonight. The rest of tonight.
People want to know, how long should they be inside the house is what they've been asking, and what's the safest amount of time to be inside for today's storms?
I'll say the rest of today. The rest of today, just stay inside.
Get a book.
I can't believe the people in the lake with the floaty. That's crazy.
And Chris said he didn't want to be. All right, a little flicker.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't got time for that now. Chris said he didn't want to be the dad, but I'm gonna be the mom. Get out of the water.
I know.
Why are they in the water?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's not good. Do not get in the water. It's not necessary. All right.
To answer your question though, the rest of tonight, just stay inside, wait it out. Even through tomorrow, we might have some standing water. The conditions, like we say, are going to improve overnight. Overnight, the rain's going to shift to the north. The winds will be subsiding overnight. But even through early tomorrow, there might be some standing water on some of the roads, and we'll be out watching to see, where the danger, I don't want to say danger, but where the rough stuff is happening tomorrow morning. We'll let you know.
And there will be people trying to clean up and fix everything. So you want to get out of the way of those responders trying to take care of it so that we can all get to going again. Someone said that in Lower Bayou Blue, they were getting 52 mile per hour winds.
Okay.
Does that sound like it's what they should be seeing?
I mean, right along the coastline, we were seeing those higher wind gusts for sure. I wonder what they're at now, but I have to look at our maps. But that seems about right. I mean, right at the coast and right near the core of the storm, we're seeing those strong wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour in a few spots, and even offshore, more like an oil rig, which is a little bit like off the ground, so it's not right at the surface. They were reporting gusts, up to 90 miles per hour earlier, but that's offshore, away from our land areas and a little bit elevated of a surface. So our coastal spots certainly seeing the strongest of the winds, and that checks out.
And earlier, Chris was talking about how this, everybody, and we have such a large area, and everyone is experiencing a little something different. So some people think, well, it looks a little dry and clear outside. Maybe I can step outside. You have to know that it could be coming.
Right, and so the eye passes over. When the character, like when you watch a movie, when the eye passes over, you're like, oh, it's clear, we're done. No, you got to stay inside because just because it looks clear for a few moments, the backside of the eye, more impacts coming in around it. So we got the rest of tonight to wait this out. Catch up on like a Netflix series or something. I don't know. What do people like to watch? Watch some shows, an HBO series.
Download some sort of streaming app.
Yes, do something.
But also keep us on your other phone.
Oh, yeah. Okay, don't turn us off. Why did I say that?
All right, well, we will be right back, but thank you so much, Alexa, because that's really some great information. If you have any questions, make sure you text them to that number on your screen, 504-529-4444.
This is a severe weather alert from WWL Weather, sponsored by Egan Insurance Agency.
Welcome back, everybody. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, September 11th. Hurricane Francine making its way through Louisiana at this hour after making landfall southwest
of Morgan City.
This is the Mandeville Lakefront at this hour. You can see the dark clouds in the distance looming there. Francine that is the New Orleans lakefront, rather, other side of the lake. You can see the dark clouds in the distance there. Those bands from Hurricane Francine are ripping their way through metropolitan New Orleans. It's getting rough out there, and it has really been rough farther down the coast. Along the coast, power outages are starting to climb. We're seeing the numbers in the tens of thousands of people without power. Francine really is starting to pack the worst of its punch.
Yeah, we're starting, we even can hear it, and we're experiencing it here at the station in the French Quarter just a few minutes ago.
Yes.
So the lights flicker, our generator's on, we can hear it all the way out in the parking lot right now. And we're hearing the wind and the rain and everything. But the power outages all along the areas where Francine's path has already taken.
Yes.
As you said, thousands of people without power.
It's almost like you can see the path of the storm as you look at Entergy's power outage map and see just how many people. I mean, in Lafourche Parish alone, 20,674 customers are without power right now. That is just Lafourche Parish. Livingston Parish, which, is even closer to Baton Rouge, 2,000. Orleans Parish, 2,000 people without power right now. And the list goes on and on and on. Terrebonne Parish, 19,153 people without power right now at 6 p.m. So those outages are continuing to climb. Entergy obviously cannot get into those areas until the winds, subside and until the storm moves out. So unfortunately, everyone in those areas who are in the red there on this Entergy map are just going to have to hang tight until the storm eases up.
What you're seeing right here, this is the entire area of Labadeville and Schriever, the Raceland area, lots and lots of red on the map. We're also seeing it again start to creep into the New Orleans metro area. There are some little isolated spots in New Orleans near Elmwood, also Wagaman, where there are a lot of people without power.
Huge swath of Houma at this hour is without power. Most of Houma, I would say. Most of the people in Houma do not have power right now. Hopefully they're able to continue staying up to date on their phones and in other ways and through other means. Bayou Gauche, significant power outages there as well. If you look at this right now, this is a camera. It's a live picture from the West Bank. Yeah, this is, again, as we mentioned, some of the worst of those bands from Hurricane Francine are making their way into the city.
And while we're on the subject of utilities, I do want to talk about the water issues that some parishes have been having. We're now hearing Plaquemines, Jefferson Parish, and the city of Kenner, at a minimum, do not want you to use water unnecessarily. Don't run your dishwasher, your washing machine. Do not flush your toilets if you don't have to. Don't take a shower. They're asking you to limit water so you do not overwhelm the lift stations in the sewer system and have all of that back up into your homes or into your neighbors' homes.
Yes, absolutely. There's just too much water out there, and they can't process that in addition to the wastewater. This, again, we're looking at the West Bank right now, and you can see the water on the camera. Very ominous looking cloud out there. Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin has been giving us the latest forecasts. He and Alexa Trischler, our other meteorologist in-house, with just some fantastic information as this storm has worked its way onto Louisiana's coast. Now, Chris, what are we looking at there?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the heavier bands per se, also kind of basically the kind of extreme outer eye wall of the storm, which is really expanded in size, but is associated with some very intense rainfall. Now, we can update as of the 6 o'clock advisory. It is back down to a Category 1 with winds of 90 miles an hour. A forward motion, though, has not changed. Still fairly decent clip northeast at 17 miles an hour. But we're just looking at those low clouds, very intense rains. This is what we saw along the coastline, and thankfully it is moving very, very quickly, and it is moving toward now Metro New Orleans. Now, we do have some intense rain over New Orleans, but even more so, as you can kind of see from that camera there, fairly heavy on both sides of the river and down the bayou. Raceland really getting in on some of the more intense rain toward Thibodaux, Des Allemands, and so that is moving from St. Charles Parish. That'll continue on into Jefferson and possibly continuing further into Metro New Orleans. So I was trying to shrink the size of my massive icon here, just to give a better idea. This is where the center of the storm is, obviously, but also to give you an idea of just how quickly that the storm has been moving. That's a little bit better. The center is still over Terrebonne Parish, so it is moving farther inland, but still over very marshier areas south of Highway 90. So if you're familiar with Terrebonne Parish, really anything south of 90, especially in the western part of the parish, is very much marsh. But it also is a little bit closer to Morgan City, and Morgan City, again, not really reporting 40, 50 mile an hour winds sustained. So we're just barely at those of a tropical storm, let alone even a Category 1 hurricane. I think that wind field for the hurricane is incredibly small and in a very, what really is happening right now, remote area. So you're really at the moment only going to find some of the strongest winds out over the marshes south of 90 at the moment. Now, those intense rains that we saw from our tower camera, this is what we were looking at. We've already got some periods of very heavy rainfall moving through Metro New Orleans. These are kind of those not necessarily feeder bands per se, because this is not really a typical structure of a tropical storm, a very messy system, not as well organized or structured. It's not a symmetrical storm by any means, but this is certainly some of the heaviest of the rainfall. And this is what the models, now not all of the models are perfect, but the GFS and the Euro, once they started to really come into agreement, basically had this system nailed. And it really did indicate, I want to kind of widen out with all of our radars that we have, kind of a network of radars across the Gulf South from Houston up toward Jackson, Hammond. When you look at the radar, now this can see pretty far out into the Gulf. You can see from kind of the little band of showers down here. These are the intense rains. Where are they? Northern and western side. Eastern, southeastern especially, and southern side is almost, not entirely, but more rain-free. So as these storms continue northward, I think we're going to start to see improving conditions almost immediately. So these are the worst of the rain. So more of the northeastern quadrant, northern section, and then northwestern and western. So kind of breaking that up like a compass. It's more of the eastern, southeastern, southern, southwestern that really is very much rain, not completely, but more so rain-free. So once this storm continues along its path northward, these intense rains will also continue moving northward, and it doesn't appear as though we really have any, at least intense storms farther south. Now, it is still drawing moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, so I'm not going to say it's completely clear and we're done with the rainfall, but at least in terms of the intense rains, I think this is primarily what we are looking at. And that is what the models were saying over the last couple of days. And in fact, kind of what they have continued to say. We can kind of let me zip back over to our GFS and Euro as to what the storm is doing right now. You can see where the rainfall is, where the storm center is, and I'm selecting the GFS here. And that's, again, basically what it's indicating, kind of the northeastern, northern, northwestern, and western sectors of the storm. That's where we find the heaviest of the rainfall. And then what you see in kind of the lighter greens are more of those light, moderate showers, more spotty in nature, and not the intense storms that will likely kind of focus more on the North Shore. So maybe it's 6 o'clock right now. Next 4 hours, we should see a lot of that shifting more north of the lake. Now, the rainfall rates are extensive, so we will pick up in those 4 hours probably several inches of rainfall. That is going to lead to some flash flooding concerns, and hopefully not too widespread, but that will lead to those concerns. More of an issue later into the night for the North Shore, as well as further along the Florida parishes. Then, as we approach midnight, 1, 2 a.m., that focus is then lifted and much, much weaker into southwestern Mississippi. So that's why I'm saying, okay, the Causeway Bridge was just closed. Certainly as the storm is nearing the metropolitan New Orleans area toward the river parishes, this was not the time to try and hit any of the bridges, especially the Causeway. As we were talking earlier with winds, with regard to winds, when you have wind moving over land, the land interaction with wind, creates friction and they slow down. Over the water, they tend to be much, much stronger. That includes Lake Pontchartrain with those strong easterly winds. So some of our wind observations that we have had on land are definitely much lighter than what you would see over the lake, and I think that is why they have now closed the Causeway. So that just coming in, breaking that the Causeway Bridge is closed. Obviously at this point in the evening, would not have recommended doing that. But going back to the rainfall kind of structure that we've been looking at, it does appear as though both the Euro and the GFS pretty much hammered that almost perfectly. One of the big reasons for that is we've got dry air, incredibly dry over Texas, but that has been able to kind of feed in on the southern and eastern side of the storm. As that occurs, it evaporates a lot of that heavier rainfall, which is why we're not seeing it, again, completely dry, but certainly more of a lack of rain and a break in the rain and maybe kind of an end to the rain as we go later into the night and into early tomorrow. That drier air really takes over and we see a far more significant drying trend as we continue on through the night and into early Thursday morning. That's what we've said. By early Thursday morning, conditions will be improving. Not that we are recommending you by any means to then start going out and seeing what there is to be seen. Just give officials some time to go out, make the assessments, make sure everything is clear, roadways are clear, power lines are not energized and lying over the roads, that those can all be cleared away. And hopefully, as we have kind of seen a lot of those higher wind estimates for the wind speeds and wind gusts have not really materialized. Thus far, they have been far less than some of the higher totals that the computer models were indicating a moment ago. I've got so many graphics here on my show, it's hard to find everything. Wanted to kind of, so I'm jumping around here. These are what the winds are doing right now. They have increased 30 plus miles an hour around the city, and we are getting wind gusts up over 50 miles an hour. So that's at that, as that band is kind of moving a little bit closer to the metro area. So expect the winds to continue increasing, sustained and gusts over the course of the next several hours. But as we were looking at, it may be roughly a 4-hour window before those more intense storms are then moving onto the North Shore, more of an issue for the folks north of the lake a little bit later in the night tonight, and then clearing us out into southwestern Mississippi after probably about 1 a.m., I would say, at kind of a rough estimate as to when those storms would probably more cleared of the North Shore after midnight, more toward 1 a.m. So where we would really like to see some observations are down, not really reporting any data at the moment, Houma, Galliano, and Port Fourchon, where we're getting in on some of those heaviest, strongest of the winds. Also going back to our buoys, if my remote will let me. Here we go. And let's see if it'll display. I didn't want to go that far. Let's see if it'll go back to the buoys. Okay. Morgan City, not too far away from the center of the storm, 52 mile an hour winds there. You're within the low end range of a tropical storm. 34 mile an hour winds. We're not quite to tropical storm or even depression in the city. So the wind field for not only the hurricane force, but even the tropical storm force winds are rather small. Now, with that being said, it does happen at times with these storms moving inland, and with that dry air interaction, we can see that stronger wind field spread out a bit before it begins to weaken. But I think what we're going to see as it expands and then then starts to weaken is not what the computer models had been indicating of 80 mile an hour wind gusts. We have not seen that yet, and I don't think we're going to see anything close to that. That would have been on the really high end range of some of the kind of worst case scenario models. And I don't think that's going to happen. As I said, when the storms are moving inland, we're going more into observations and near-term forecast as opposed to the long-term trying to figure out what these storms are going to do and what they're going to do in the long range. We don't have to worry about that. Is in the long range, this storm will be well to our north and we will be done with it. So switching back over to weather stations and the radar itself. Again, the winds at Morgan City out of the north, 44 miles an hour. They're out of the northeast at New Orleans at 32 miles an hour. So it does look like the storm may be trying to make a little bit more of a jog closer toward the city, just based upon what the winds are doing here. This would be more indicative of what would happen in the northwestern or western part of the storm itself. So with those winds now kind of favoring a little bit more of a northeasterly direction, it may be that the storm is going to push a little bit closer to Metro New Orleans. And we've already seen that trend with some of the heaviest of the rain bands moving in the direction of Metro New Orleans, already getting in on some of the heaviest of the rainfall. And note, we've got quite a break where we do currently have 2 active flash flood warnings, while still intense from Thibodaux to Raceland and Cutoff. Anywhere south toward Houma and Chauvin, you've got a bit of a break. Now, on the southern end of the eye wall and the western side, southwestern side, the rainfall hasn't been nearly as intense as kind of the northeastern part of the storm. So this is probably by and far the most intense part of the storm, racing across the bayou parishes, moving toward the river parishes, and I think somewhat will be clipping Metro New Orleans.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. We do have some breaking news. We want to let everyone out there know that toddler that NOPD had found has been reunited safely with his home, with his parents, and so he is safe.
That's wonderful news.
Yes, great news.
Yeah, they say the family came to the 3rd District Station, reunited. That was a scary few moments for them, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and we're so glad that he's home safe. Yes. But back to our news coverage and our coverage of Hurricane Francine. We are really starting to see the worst effects of this as it really makes its way up the coast. While the storm may be weakening, it's still causing big problems in many, many parts of our viewing area.
Yeah, we now know that there are thousands of people without power all throughout our entire viewing area.
Tens of thousands.
And as we've said, you can see the path of the hurricane based on the Entergy map. Also in the path of the hurricane has been Lily Cummings, and she has ditched the hat, probably because of the wind down there.
Yeah, Lily, how are things going? I mean, you really, I think, are through the worst of it. What do you think?
Devin, Katie, I just have to say, I thought we were too, because we had actually gotten a chance to kind of dry out, but now the rain is back, and yes, you are correct. I have let go of the hair, let go of the hat, because you can see it on my wrist here. It actually has flown off 3 times now, so we're forgetting that. Anyways, we are out here reporting on the weather and not my fashion choices. So here we go. Let's talk about what we see out here. It is still very, very windy. Since we last talked to you all, I know that you mentioned there are more than 19,000 customers across Terrebonne Parish without power. I think I told you all that we are kind of catty corner here from one of the main power stations in Terrebonne Parish in Houma. So we have actually seen the power lines here bouncing up and down because of this wind, which is never a good sign. However, I will tell you that when you came to us last, the Civic Center here in Houma did not have power, and now it does. So we've seen kind of some places around us now. There's a gas station even down the street that you can see still has power down the street. So that's good to see that there are still some folks with power, but obviously more than 19,000 customers across Terrebonne without it at this point. Now, I have to say we have seen a lot of debris since you last talked to us. A lot of tree limbs just flying by. So, oh wow, that's a big one out there. Can you see it, Rick? Show them that big one in the parking lot. That's a large tree. Can we pan this way and show them this tree limb that's in the parking lot? So that's a large tree there in the parking lot, and as I mentioned, we are getting a lot more rain as I'm speaking to you. We had a second there, a break to dry out, and now it's coming down again. So you can see that large tree limb. This is why you don't want to be out, because these tree limbs, down power lines, things of this nature, we don't know exactly the extent of the damage at this point. I've texted with folks that are at the Emergency Operations Center in Gray, Louisiana. I've also talked to the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office to try and get some updates. They said that they were in a briefing about 30 minutes or so ago. So they said they would be sending us some updates about what they're looking at parish-wide. We continue to see law enforcement officers, both from Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office and Houma Police, out on the roadways, kind of checking out things that are going on around here. But as far as residents and folks like that, they are staying clear of this, staying off the roads, which has been really great to see. But as I mentioned, the biggest concerns that we have out here right now are obviously power, and then, of course, the debris that we've been seeing. Those are two big concerns for residents here. So like I said, in this area near the Civic Center in Houma, it looks like maybe there's some power, but obviously thousands dealing with those power outages at this point. So hopefully folks got the chance. Oh my goodness, Rick Neese, can you spin the camera around? Do you see this roof? This is coming off as we speak, y'all. We have been monitoring this roof across the way, and I will figure out exactly what building this is, this gray building in front of us. But we have been hearing metal for the last hour or so, and I worried that might be some roof that was coming off, and it appears that it is. And it's hard to say, you know, when you're down here in Terrebonne, there's obviously a lot of buildings that are still dealing with damage from Hurricane Ida and are still trying to get shored up from that storm and still try to replace their roofs. So it's obviously hard to tell sometimes, like, is this still damage from Ida or is this new? But I will say that this was not here whenever we got here several hours ago, and you can see that it's starting to come off of this building. So definitely worried about debris, worried about folks' roofs. Like I said, we've been hearing a lot of metal and kind of almost like a sheet metal clanging on the top of roofs. So worried about that, and then worried about power. Those are our top three concerns right now in Terrebonne Parish. And then obviously they're watching the storm surge very closely in the lower parts of the parish, where they issued a mandatory evacuation earlier today, and I know that they were expecting anywhere between 5 to 10 feet of storm surge across the parish in those areas. So those are kind of the top concerns right now in Terrebonne Parish. Obviously, folks, don't get out if you don't have to be out, because you don't know what you're going to run into. You could run into metal like this on the roadways. You could run into downed trees or power lines. At this point, we don't exactly know what's out there. So we're keeping it safe, staying underneath the shelter that we're under right now. And we just want to make sure that you all are staying safe as well. Keep those devices charged if you have power. If you don't, hopefully you get it restored as soon as possible. And I'm hoping to get, like I said, some updates from parish officials on exactly what they're dealing with across the parish. Like I said, they were in a briefing, so I'm hoping that we get a little bit more information about what are the main things that they're focusing on right now. Katie, Devin.
All right, Lily, thank you so much. I hope you've got somewhere to go, that you will be out of the way of all of that if it starts to fly. So please be careful out there.
Yes, absolutely. At 23,000 now without power in that parish. Also, another parish that's seeing tens of thousands without power is Lafourche, and that's where Meg Ferris is. She's been reporting from Galliano for us throughout this storm event. Meg, how are things now? It was getting crazy last time we saw you.
Yeah, I have to tell you, this is the absolute worst ban that has come through since Russell and I have been here. Russell, if you could pan over to the street, to Highway 1, and you can see how hard the wind is blowing. I hope the camera can pick that up. How hard the wind is blowing the water across the roadway. Can y'all get a visual? Can you see that at home on TV? I mean, it just shows how fast the wind is going. And Russell and I are standing behind the news van, which is blocking us from the wind. I mean, if I step out beyond it is absolutely much worse. But Russell, now if you could pan to Bayou Lafourche, and you can see we're actually getting whitecaps now. We do see electricity off in some places, but we see it on in a lot of places. And we left this location along the bayou since our last live shot, and we drove up and down both sides of the bayou, and we saw some of the huge shrimp boats that were tied to their docks, and they all had their lights on. So we went knocking on some of the boats, and but people weren't on them. But we talked to one of the shrimpers who was in his house across the street, And I said, why do you have all your motor running and everything? And he said, well, what we do here in Lafourche, he said, when the power goes out in our house, he said, we walk across Highway 1, we get on our big shrimp boats, and we have the generator running, and that's the way we have power until the power comes back on. So I didn't know that was a thing, and he didn't want to go on camera, but he called a few of his other shrimping buddies who were doing the exact same thing. So I guess they know that's the routine down here. They expect to lose power, but so far in all the driving we did around in this, we have not seen any down power lines or down power poles or that type of thing. We haven't seen big trees or branches down, which is amazing to me. But again, the wind is just now picking up. The worst that we've seen it so far, and again, this is with the car blocking us down here. So I know Chris Franklin has been talking about that it's going to keep getting worse until I guess a few more hours down here. But again, as I mentioned in the last live shot, we have not seen one person out. Every single person is in their home. No cars on the road except an occasional police car who's checking on us. Again, I talked to Archie Chasson, who's at the Emergency Operations Center in Raceland, and he said that so far they've had no reports of any problems coming in at all at this time. But that it was getting bad in Raceland too when I last talked to him. So that's all the updated information we have now here from Galliano. We're going to keep looking for people. But pretty much they smartly are staying inside.
Oh, good. Yeah,
yes,
we hope you
news.
stay safe as well. Oh, my goodness, Meg. That wind is really whipping, and you can see just how high the bayou has gotten next to you. I mean, it is coming up fast.
It's changed so much since the last time we checked in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know it's hard to hear when you're out there and the wind is whipping.
Yeah.
It is really difficult to hear. But it is amazing to see the sheets of rain going across the highway there. It is
incredible,
wild.
incredible. And just seeing the wind actually push the water in the bayou too is just, it's breathtaking. It's really hard to describe what a storm surge is. I was trying to tell my kids about it and kind of explain what a storm surge looks like. And you can't really see it, but it's almost like when you're in a bathtub and you put your arm through the water and you kind of push the water. That's how I described it. But that's kind of what that looked like when we saw Meg earlier. And now you can see the water is like up over where it was.
Way over.
And it's still climbing, it appears. So nothing seems to be calming down yet for them.
No, not yet. And things are also not calm at all where Paul Murphy is.
Yes.
He is in St. John Parish for us tonight, and it is really coming down there, Paul.
Well, as if you might guess from the conditions that you see right here, that eye wall from Francine is now moving over St. John Parish. We are told that that happened about maybe 15 minutes ago. It started, and now we've really seen the rain increase, the winds increase. In fact, right down the street from where we're standing, there was a small tree that got blown down. There are a couple trees that are down across the parish, and we also heard that the water that we were afraid was coming up a little too fast on P-Line Road from the west shore of Lake Pontchartrain may not be quite as bad as they had originally projected. We did talk with Parish President Jacqueline Hotard just a short while ago, and she said that the impacts so far have been somewhat surprising.
Well, on the radar, I mean, the eye wall is, we're in the eye wall right now, that the right part of the storm. So we're feeling some of that intensification right now. We have recorded gusts up to about 40 miles an hour, 40, 45 miles an hour. So we're seeing that intensification right now. We expect that these conditions could continue for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then, the storm will continue to move through. But anyone who's in St. John or in the region right now, they're definitely feeling the winds picking up, or at least hearing them pick up, outside.
What are your expectations in terms of ultimate impacts from this storm on St. John?
We're hopeful that we don't see the flooding impact that we thought that we could have. That just hasn't really presented itself. A lot of the areas that are typically underwater by now are not yet, so we're going to remain hopeful that that stays. Some of the wind impacts, we saw that there were a few trees that were down, some smaller trees. We do have a couple of areas that don't have electricity right now, some isolated outages, and energy obviously can't get out in the conditions. So we're looking at impacts of just maybe some minor damage and maybe some electricity outages for a short period of time.
And what are you keeping your eyes on this evening?
Just the wind damage, but we're still keeping our eyes on the lake levels, just water rising. We know that in these tropical storm and hurricane events, there's the likeliness of flash flooding, so we're just keeping our eyes on that. I won't be comfortable until Francine is completely out, so we're just going to stay up through the night, continue to monitor everything, but these worsened conditions, we don't expect that to continue through the night for about another hour or so. We'll see these worsened conditions, and then Francine will continue to move on. Now, that doesn't mean we're out of the clear, because we can still see some effects from some of those bands, but the worst of it will be over.
What surprises you about Francine?
Every storm is different. Every storm is different. You know, we look at some of the storms, like let's say an Isaac that was an underwhelming, if you will, storm, and it flooded St. John. You look at a storm like Francine, and you've got some other factors that are not in your favor that could contribute to a lot of flooding, and then it doesn't, or it takes this little, hobble at the end. So every storm is different, it's unique, and they're unpredictable. So it's just important that we never get tired of preparing for a storm, and that we just continue to remain vigilant. And we're still not out of the woods. It's still not over yet. I don't want to give that false sense of security, but we're hopeful that the impacts we're seeing right now are the worst it's going to get. But we're going to see it all the way through, and we're sending our prayers out to our neighbors on the east and west, that they make it through as well.
And definitely across southeast Louisiana, we're certainly not out of the woods just yet. As you heard the parish president talking about the fact that we're only about 15, 20 minutes into this major part of the storm here in St. John. We still have the whole feeder bands from the back end of this hurricane to go through as well. So now is not the time to step out and take a look at what's going on out here, because I'll tell you, we're feeling those 40-mile-per-hour gusts. There are trees that are falling down in the parish. And as the parish president mentioned, there are scattered power outages in the area. We saw maybe at least 1,100 of them at this point. And those energy crews cannot get back out and start hooking up a lot of this power until this storm passes. So right now, again, the eye wall is moving over St. John Parish, this portion of the river parishes, and it's going to be a rough hour or so until this storm hopefully moves on out of here. That's the story in St. John Parish at the moment. Paul Murphy, WWL, Louisiana.
Okay, Chris is having a little problem with his microphone, and now he's here. Now he's saying he's here.
Let's go to Chris.
I thought you could just use a few seconds of silence. That would have been helpful. We're going to show me it all?
You told us.
There we go. All right. What Paul was talking about, and you kind of see the intense storms of where he is in St. John Parish. Notice on our colorized infrared satellite, this little blossoming of storms. These are kind of storms re-intensifying right along that eastern eye wall that he was just talking about. So where he is really some of the most intense of the storms as they move through southeast Louisiana. On a wide scale of our radar network across the region, note though that once these cells, now again we still got to get through them across much of the metro area, once these, and I don't want to say cells, really complex storms associated with what is now more of a broad circulation and not as much the eye wall per se, but more of the broad overall circulation. As that moves farther north, note that there really isn't anything farther south or east or southeast or southwest. This is that dry air taking over. So what will still be intense storms moving through over the next several hours, very very strong winds. Again, what you've seen from our reporters are generally speaking 40 to 50 sustained mile-per-hour winds. So when you think about wind speeds, a lot of people don't think 40, 50 is all that strong. It is very strong, and it will do some damage. Now, thankfully, these will be moving through very quickly, and we will continue to watch for any further development south. But when we switch back over to the satellite, there isn't anything. I think that dry air is really going to take over, and we will see most of that rainfall start wrapping up. Now, that being said, much of the metro area is only just now getting into those more intense bands. Winds have been gusting at Kenner up to 53 miles an hour, sustained though at 32. Now we're getting some breaks, at least across most or much of Terrebonne Parish, lower Lafourche as well, starting to get those breaks. Still intense from Thibodaux, Des Allemands. It is getting more and more intense throughout all of the river parishes, and this is also going to move kind of in a direction toward New Orleans, especially St. Charles, JP. We are definitely looking at some of the heaviest of that and the strongest of the winds, the heaviest of the rainfall moving toward you. If there is any silver lining, is the fact that it is moving very quickly, still moving northeast at 17 miles an hour. And hopefully that forward speed will pick up even more so, because these are the more intense storms. So what people are saying, it's starting to get a little hairy outside. This is what we're talking about. These are the more intense, kind of, again, more, not exactly an eye wall per se, but what had been that eye wall structure, which is now starting to kind of widen out a bit as the storm is starting to lose a bit of its strength and the wind shear, dry air beginning to really take over. It is kind of spreading out a lot of the more intense rains and stronger winds. A little bit of a zoomed in view of the storms from Laplace to Luling. So along the river parishes, very intense rainfall, and at times you get some pockets of some very intense rain here in the city as well. Zooming up to the North Shore, you've had some breaks, but now we're getting kind of this moderate heavier rain moving across Mandeville, really along the entirety of the lakefront from Tangipahoa Parish, more so intense in St. Tammany Parish, and that will continue to push to the north as well. Areas farther north, it's been more of a light, moderate rain.